Roy was worried. He was Jack's commanding officer, but Jack just avoided him.
Wait a minute. What?
Roy was worried. He was Jack's commanding officer, but Jack just avoided him.
Did I just heard that correctly?
He was Jack's commanding officer, but Jack just avoided him.
Huh?
He was Jack's commanding officer.
No. This is wrong. This is completely and utterly wrong. Raiden never met the real Roy Campbell. So how can Rose claim this? Let's dive in and analyze this whole thing. The Metal Gear Solid series is famous for its deep and thought-provoking dialogues that dive into big topics like politics, war, and human nature. Hideo Kojima's attention to details for storytelling is a big part of why the series is so iconic. He is known for crafting complex narratives filled with symbolism, and his dialogues and plot twists always keep you hooked. Plus, there are tons of subtle clues and foreshadowing that make paying attention to them totally worth it. The characters in his games have a deep backstories and motivations that make them feel real and compelling. Iconic characters like Solid Snake, Arakan, and Revolver Ocelot deliver memorable lines that have become staples in the gaming culture. Kojima's use of cinematic techniques like long cutscenes and elaborate set pieces makes players feel like they are part of an interactive movie. His storytellings are often layered and complex, leaving lots of room for interpretations, which keeps fans talking and analyzing the games long after they have finished playing. This attention to details and storytelling is a big reason why Kojima's games have such a dedicated fan base. However, despite all of that, Kojima is also known for his frequent retcons in the Metal Gear series. His games are famous for their complex storytelling, but he often tweaks or expands the story in ways that can surprise players. Kojima uses these retcons to add new layers to the narrative, fill in plot holes, or introduce new characters and events that weren't in the original core storyline. For example, in Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots, we got a deeper look into the backstories of characters like Big Boss and the Patriots, expanding and reinterpreting the series lore. On the other hand, Metal Gear Solid V The Phantom Pain introduces new twists that shake up what we thought we knew about key characters like Big Boss and Venom Snake. Another example is in Metal Gear Solid. If you take a look at Snake's hair in the breathing mode, you will notice he have a blonde hair, and in the game he have a black hair. The theory is that Solid Snake's original hair color was actually blonde, and he dyed it black to avoid being mistaken as Liquid. But this was retcon, and you can see the evidence for it in the original design of Bliskin in Metal Gear Solid 2. Another retcon was Big Boss's being in his late 50s in the 1970s, which is obviously a mistake. Some fans love these retcons because they add depth and complexity to the story, while others find them a bit confusing or frustrating since they can mess with the established narrative. Either way, Kojima's use of retcons keep the story fresh and let him explore new creative directions, making the series constantly evolving and intriguing experience for players. Usually, retcons don't bother me too much, especially if they are minor, like Solid Snake's hair color and Meryl taking psychotherapy to lose her interest in men. I am okay with these changes as long as they do not mess with the core story of the franchise. However, there was one particular retcon that I cannot get over no matter what, and it is by far my most hated one, and it happened in Metal Gear Solid 4. In Act 2, Snake gets a Kodak call from Raiden, and then he calls Rose to inform her about it. Pay close attention to what Rose has to say here.
Jack?
Yeah,
Did he seem okay?
yeah, as far as I could tell from his voice.
Really? That's great. Snake, I have a favor to ask.
What?
Don't let him know I'm involved in this operation, okay? I think it would be best to just leave him alone for now.
What happened between you and Jack?
After the Big Shell incident, he became unstable. Memories began to resurface from his childhood when he fought for Solidus in the Liberian Civil War. And in the midst of all of that, the baby we had together, it hadn't even been born yet. Jack slowly stopped coming home. And when he did, he'd be dead drunk, sometimes covered in cuts and bruises. Roy was worried. He was Jack's commanding officer, but Jack just avoided him. I was all alone. And Roy was so kind to me. He's the one who encouraged me to become a counselor. I know it sounds like I'm making excuses, but I needed to get over it, to move on with my life. I'm worried about him, of course, but I'm also afraid of him.
All right. I'll keep my mouth shut.
Thank you, Snake.
Let's start with Roy Campbell. Campbell was originally assigned as the commander of Foxhound before the events of Zanzibar Land in Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake. After those events, he retired from the military. Years later, Campbell was pulled out of retirement to lead a special Black Op mission, the Shadow Moses incident for Metal Gear Solid. The main reason for his recall was to use him to persuade Solid Snake to join the mission. They even transferred Meryl to the base to manipulate him even further. After the Shadow Moses incident, Campbell went back into retirement. In Metal Gear Solid 2, during the Big Shell incident, Roy Campbell makes a return to command the operation. However, it turns out he wasn't the real Roy Campbell. It was an AI. Raiden was talking to an AI created from his own brain through his nanomachines based on expectations and experience. And he didn't realize it until the AI started breaking down due to Emma's cluster virus. Raiden never actually met the real Roy Campbell before.
Colonel, I just remembered something.
What?
That I've never met you in person. Not once.
Now, here's the problem. Rose claims that Roy Campbell was Jack's commanding officer at Foxhound. But that is not true. Foxhound was disbanded after the Shadow Moses incident. Campbell was not the commanding officer of Foxhound during the Big Shell incident, as Rose suggests. Even if Campbell and Raiden happened to meet after the incident, Campbell was still retired from the military. So, Roy Campbell shouldn't have had any authority to be Raiden's commanding officer. I doubt Campbell even knew who Raiden was until the Big Shell incident. The only logical explanation might be that Rose didn't actually know what happened during the Big Shell incident. She could have been kept in the dark and fed false information by Raiden, Snake, and Campbell. But even this seems like a pretty weak argument. This is by far one of the worst lines and the worst retcons I have ever seen in the entire series, especially coming from someone as detail-oriented as Kojima. It is hard to believe he made such an obvious mistake. Unless, of course, this mistake was intentional. Kojima might have deliberately made this slip to challenge players who did not fully grasp the story of Metal Gear Solid 2. Maybe it is a way to highlight how some people miss the deeper meaning, especially regarding the S3 plan, the Patriots' control over information, and digital censorship with Arsenal gear. In the end, it feels like Kojima used this simple line to undermine the complexity of Metal Gear Solid 2, which is pretty frustrating. Because of this, I consider this line to be the worst line ever spoken in the entire series, and one of the worst retcons that I have ever seen. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.